Next item is the staffing summary, minimum course enrollment.
What you have here is Kristen's staffing summary. The board, this is informational to the board to give them an idea of the preliminary staffing we're looking at based on sectioning for the fall of 2015. The other information that Kristen provides is more or less informational. The action that we need from the board tonight after closed session, if there's any reductions in force, and then in also approving the courses that are under the 20, which is board policy. Kristen?
I provided the staffing summary sheet on page 213 for the 2015-16 school year, and this is based on current course selections and then the historical trend of transfer students from now to the start of the school year. And there's a few questions, and so in the 97.2, that includes lowering core sophomore level math and English classes to 25 to 1, and then regular level junior math and English classes to 27 to 1, and then honors freshman and sophomore math and English classes to 28 to 1. And the reason that there's so many different caps is because we wanted, at the building level, we had a lengthy discussion and we wanted to start lowering junior core classes, but in order to do that within the 97.2 FTE, we had to slightly raise the honors freshman and sophomore core caps. And so I didn't want to create 2 additional categories on the top just for those 2 areas because I thought it would be really confusing, and my hope is that the following year that these are all temporary and all of those core classes could be lowered to the 25 to 1 class average. And then in addition, under the 97.2, the other change that is included is increasing the instructional technology coordinator position from a 0.4 this year to a 0.6 for next year. Following the staffing summary, you have a historical trend of special education enrollment from 2011 to 2016, so you can see how those numbers have continued to increase over the past 5 years. And I share this with you because it's a little concerning to me that last year, over the summer and since the start of the school year, we had 23 students with IEPs move in. And if that trend happens again for next school year, we may need to increase FTE a little bit depending on the needs that these students come in with. And that's not something that we're really able to predict. We weren't predicting 23 students come in this past summer. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as something that might come up in the future.
Do we know what's going on?
No, I was going to ask
Do
the same
we know
question.
what's going on there? Are the numbers of students percentage-wise with IEPs and lower grades increasing? Or are people somehow flocking here because we have good programs, or do you have any idea?
I think it's a bit a combination of both. I think, we had one class that came in recently that had a higher percentage of IEPs, but that has decreasing for future classes that are coming in according to the feeder schools. But I think the big fluctuation is students are flocking here and moving into the district that have IEPs.
Gail does the 8th, Ms. Branken does the 8th grade annual reviews right now in the spring with the feeder schools. So anybody that's in our feeder system, we have an idea of. It's the individuals that transfer in. So we had a significant number of transfers in that had IEPs that moved into the district.
Is that the special services line?
On the summary sheet?
Yeah.
Yes.
So how many students do we have that get serviced by 11 FTEs?
We have
218.
218 for next year. This year's 196.
And your 218 is making an assumption of transfers coming in?
No, it is not. Those are just based on our current students.
Current students and 8th graders.
8th graders, but not the
We
transfers.
don't know transfers with IEPs.
And the same thing with private placements. We've doubled that in 2 years.
Yes, you can see, and those students
that
are
doesn't
included in
affect-
the total number, but yes, private placements have gone up as well.
So
Um,
historically, it's not probably shown, but I think since I've been superintendent, we've added close to 1 FTE annually. Whether it was a behavior interventionist one year, then we did another intervention last year. This year, we're adding another full FTE. And sometimes we've done a intervention from LADSI as well as, at the same side as these numbers continue to grow up, something you won't see in this staffing summary, but our outside services from LADSI also will increase in regards to school psychology, speech and pathology, occupational therapy, those types of things.
So,
Go on, Gary.
so I understand this is 218 plus the 18, or 218 minus the 18 that the 11 would be? Is the private placement in the 218?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we're talking about 200 with the.
200 students that physically attend our
Yeah, all right.
But Kevin, we went from 2011, 12 paraprofessionals, 8.8 teachers, so 20.8, to this year we're at 26. So we've gone up by almost a third. And that's not counting some of the ones you mentioned, like LADSI or whatever, too, right?
Right.
I mean, we understand we have to,
The number went up
we want to
60.
provide the right services, and I know you go through it, it's just.
I just want to make sure the transfers coming in we make sure they're in the district and everything else.
Well, they have to go through all the steps of residency, but then some things that will occur throughout the year, but they'll have to get those services for at least a year. Is then Gail and her staff for next year, our new special ed director and her staff, are able to assess and analyze if the student really qualifies for IEP or just some interventions, and then we're able to. But when they come in with an IEP, you have to implement that IEP for the first year until you have time to do your analysis and review.
Okay.
The chart underneath that shows classes that are under 20, which are included in the 97.2 FTE. And you can see 2 of those classes are our capstone classes with AP Calc BC and AP Spanish Literature.
Well, those make a lot of sense to me, but the pre-algebra, is that for, anybody can take that, or, I mean, it's not for, like, special ed, because you would have listed that, right?
Correct, yeah, and we
So, I mean, why do
purpose-
we, we've got, French is an oddity. For next year, you think you're gonna have a very small class, but your French too, you're gonna have a big class. But how do we decide, I mean, the opposite of a capstone, do we continue to provide French if students don't want to take French, or do we continue to provide pre-algebra if students don't want to take pre-algebra?
Well, pre-algebra, I mean, we need to be a little more specific. That's kind of our first level intervention for our lowest performing
Okay.
8th graders.
And-
So,
And you want that to be a low number, and the reason, because that means students are coming in at grade level, and the reason that we offer it in the general education curriculum in the math department is so that it's open to all students, as opposed to restricting it only for students with IEPs.
Okay.
French 1, it is an anomaly. I don't know why it's low this year. French 2 typically is higher because students that come in as freshmen,
They can take one or two depending
yes.
upon how they did primary
Yeah.
school. I
And so
forgot
that
about
fluctuates from year to year depending on what those numbers look like. Cap semester 2, again, is a bit of an anomaly. Semester 1 is, not an issue, but I think as the state moved the test up to March 3rd this year, students that enroll in semester 2 are the students that, receive a lot less practice before the state-funded test, and then are really committed to paying money and going in and taking another test at a national test date, so they have that additional time to practice some of those skills and strategies. Construction tech, we have a new industrial arts teacher, David Weissar, who has collaborated with the musical this year and built a lot of the sets that you saw, and so students that originally signed up next year for theater tech, which isn't running, got moved into construction tech so that this class can help with the musical next year. And so we're really hoping to continue to grow and expand that. So that's why we are suggesting that run under 20 for next year.
Any questions? All right.
On the next page, we have a chart that's just is for your information, classes that are over 20 but are under the cap that are offered only one period a day that we would also like to run and are included in the 97.2 FTE. And then the two charts after that.
Can you stop on
Yeah.
that one? It jumps out at me, and I put a note in there. We've had more than one, in fact, the last meeting, we had a parent sponsor from the music group tell us how important this is. We had a ton of people come, how important this is, and like why we're holding it back. And now we've got 3 fine arts, music type, and creativity classes that are significantly under what the size of the class is. So there seems to me to be a disconnect between people saying there's this great desire for fine arts, and I'm not against fine arts, I think they're important. But the question is, should we, like this, the 3 of them have 90 and we have 65 students in them. We barely have enough for 2 of the classes. So how do we decide, maybe we shouldn't run one of them and see if some of the kids want to take the other one instead of just keep running 3 smaller classes?
Well, there are 3 very different classes, and one thing to note about Honors Madrigal Singers is that at most other schools, that class would be running below 20. It's their capstone class, and it's a class that students have to audition for. And so if you were to ask, Diane Morelli, who teaches the class, I'm sure she could tell you that, 21 is very high.
But you know what, I'm sure if
I
I asked any
understand.
teacher for any class, they can tell me why less students is good, and we appreciate that. But we also are going up 3 teachers, which there's a significant cost to the school district to do that when we have a tight budget. So we don't have to keep being reminded that less everybody thinks is better. What I'm missing on this is, again, that's a capstone, okay, and I realize those are 3 different kinds of classes, but, how do we, and I'm going to maybe ask it again later, how do we decide whether we should keep running all these classes?
Well, one thing we look at is when we look at the classes that we want to run that are over 20 but under the cap, we look at the possibility of transfer students
Right.
being able to go into those classes,
Okay.
or looking at classes that are their capstone classes. So that's usually the criteria that we use, and we were much more strict in telling instructional coaches that if it wasn't -2 from what the cap was, that we probably weren't going to run it unless it was an exception. So, Clarion is our school newspaper, Rousers our yearbook,
But if you look
things
at,
of that nature.
if you look at cadet marching, is that not your freshman marching band?
It is, yes, our freshman marching band.
Your level 1 marching
Yes,
band? So if you
level 1.
cancel that, we're basically slowly but surely canceling off the development or the future growth of marching band.
That's fine, but
So
what I'm
that's
saying
one of
is,
those things.
a crowd of people came in here and told us how
Sure.
important this is. It's like the CTeam. We had a good group of people saying, we need, a couple of years ago, a college professor from U of C and the vice president of here, CTeam's important. And what do we say? Well, great. Just have people sign up for it, and we'll support it. So again, I challenge the same thing. Have to go, somebody works with the music group, right? Is that your job? Who's the
No.
contact for the music group?
We have
On
an
our
instruct-
administration?
We have an instructional coach, and then currently John Passarella oversees.
No, but one of our administrators belongs to, is
The PTO and the music
the
boosters.
liaison for the music group.
Right. The music group goes through the PTO. So
And
they
who's
come
the
to-
liaison?
I'm for the
Kristen for
PTO.
the PTO.
I thought so. So that was a yes. So I'd appreciate if you go back to them and say, you've come to the board and said you want all these programs, and then I have to do a presentation to the board showing we don't really have good support for some of these programs. That's the way to make them work, I think. So I'd appreciate if you would consider, Kevin,
I think-
going back to that.
I think this shows as a good example why the board should not react or respond to citizen comments and just let the data show and work itself out. Because this kind of shows those people at the time, when they're going through something, they come and they're very passionate, they present to the board. And the board wants to do what's best for kids, so they hear this and they think, maybe they're not getting, and then now you kind of see like,
Yeah, but I also think Tim's
Right.
point's a good one, so that we keep the conversation going with them, so.
well, we've also had conversations not only with our band directors, our music directors, like, why are only 24 incoming freshmen signing up for band?
Right.
What are we doing to get out in the junior highs to push
Right.
band?
Okay.
What are you, so we've had these conversations and we're continuing, same with some of the music classes.
And we got new uniforms, so.
Correct.
That's right.
Correct.
We want them to use
So let me
them.
ask you a question, the 97.2, that includes no CT?
Correct.
Well, and I just want to make a comment on that point. These numbers would be helpful during public comment or some of these kind of key charts, because during these public comments and people are passionate, it would be helpful just to cite some data and say, well, our data shows this, because we sit here and sometimes we're kind of like lame ducks, like we don't care, we're just walls and.
Well, that's why we get to talk about it now, and Chris.
That's right.
and
It's on
are
TV.
here.
All right, Kristen. next one.
And then the last two charts are just classes that are currently over the caps. And this just means, we have a few more students that signed up for them. And how the scheduling process works is, for these classes, we will lift the cap when we have the computer schedule students, so that students that sign up for it all have the opportunity to get it, but students will naturally conflict out. So for example, if a student signed up for both photography 2 and digital imaging 1, and they're both offered the same period, that student will have to make a choice. And so that process in itself usually makes that list of classes that are over the caps very small. And then once that happens, we look to see what students' second choice is, to see if we can provide that. And we also look at whether students will have an opportunity to take that in future years, and how we determine which students will not be allowed to take that class.
So with the one-to-one, when we saw Leiden, they had a class set up for computers that, the kids were the maintenance, they fixed and services computers, but they also incorporated 4 different types of alternates that they could choose to. That won't be because we're only doing freshmen, right? Or will we look at something like that, or?
We're not ready for that.
We're not, yeah.
Okay.
We're not even close to that. So with the way we're implementing this at one class at a time, that would be something that we're talked about possibly doing as a club first for the first year or two. And then once you get to where we have all 4 classes that are on machines and that many repair tickets and things like that, then we would see how the club's grown and see if that's eventually something that would become a section. But that's not something we would implement until. We had a pretty at-length discussion, because Applied Arts came and talked with, at our last technology meeting with Mike, Kristen, and myself, and Bridget, about they would be willing to teach a class like that. But we thought to start it off as a stipend position first, maybe an after-school activity, or, and then as we continue to increase the number of students with machines, the need should eventually call for maybe a class.
Okay.
Kristen, what's the challenge ed class? What's
The
is that a
challenge
gym
that
class?
is a PE course.
Okay. And what do they do? You know, is it like outdoors?
Outdoors,
Oh, outdoors.
canoeing and swimming.
Okay, thank you.
That's with the wall climbing and.
Okay, I assumed it was.
Through fire and mud.
All right, any other questions for Kristen on this?
Just one, the fine arts survey, you have 260, how am I supposed to read that one? Because you have 2 sections and a class cap. Does that mean we can only accommodate 60 and we have 263?
So we only have 2 sections. We have a first semester class and a second semester class, but within each class we have 4 different rotations. So within each semester we can accommodate
120.
120
Oh, okay,
approximately.
okay.
All right. Okay, any other questions? If not, I'd like to have a motion, please. Yeah, that's what you're looking for, right?
For the classes that are under
Yeah.
20.
Hopefully somebody from curriculum could approve, do the motion. John?
Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 2A, Cook County, Illinois, hereby approves in accordance with District Policy 6:31, minimum course enrollment, the list of courses for the 2015-2016 school year with projected enrollment below 20 students, based on the current student enrollment data as presented in the March 10, 2015 Board Agenda Packet.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mike Welch. Marianne?
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Dr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Goodchick?
Yes.
Mrs. Ruska?
Yes.
Mr. Sindi?
Yes.